Hey guys, welcome back. BDCKR here. We're back with our weekly Q&A content. It's on YouTube, which is probably where you are just statistically right now. It's also on a bunch of different podcasting platforms, which you can check out by checking out the links in the description on YouTube or by looking at whatever you're currently playing this on if you're on one of the podcasting platforms already. That's audio only, but it's my preferred way in general to consume this type of thing.
Right.
So it's a lot easier to take on the go with you, blah, blah, blah. But we don't actually get any ad revenue from it. So if you're on YouTube, it's objectively the best for us. We offer the podcast essentially as a service.
Yeah, and when you say it's best for us, you mean it's like marginally better than nothing.
Marginally, yeah. There's a streamer who I like. He's like the only streamer that I actually watch content from on any kind of regular basis called Northern Lion.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw a clip of him recently. He was playing a game with his friend. And he said that the first time he met his friend, the guy said, thanks for making that that video series on how to make YouTube videos. I watched the whole thing and it was really helpful to me. And the first thing he said to him was apparently, thanks for the 5 cents, buddy. Which was...
Well, that seems excessive, actually.
Maybe he's got better CPM than we do.
Yeah, I guess so. But 5 cents that would require how many views?
I don't know. But importantly, we get fractions of cents from your watches on YouTube, especially if you don't click the skip ad button. You watch them all the way through. Yeah. Maybe even you click on the ad a couple times. I don't really know exactly what gets them to pay out. It's different. And to be clear, we don't expect you to do that, but you could.
Don't do that.
Yeah, it's true. The problem...
It would ruin your viewing experience, I think.
Yeah. I mean, okay, this is before we've even gotten to anything, right? This is pre-questions for a Q&A. Okay. But I think that the problem with the way that ads monetize experiences is that they only make money in aggregate. As an individual, you're worth basically nothing. So that's one problem. The second sort of layer to it is that... the way that they're most beneficial to the content creator, the closest they get to each viewer being meaningfully impactful, is when they know so much about you that they can sell the ads for more. Right? And that's sort of bad for the user. So there's no real sort of way of making it a win-win scenario for both the user and the creator.
Right.
There's always trade-offs. And so the real problem too is that even if you don't have financial resources and you want to support a creator by watching through a whole ad or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. The cost to you to spend that much of your time in most cases is your time is worth so much more than what we get out of it for the ad. So it's interesting because the ad revenue is nice for us, and it's not like I find it super annoying when I get ads, whether I'm skipping them or in the case of Taskmaster, right? The show that we both really like, releases their episodes on YouTube. And I'm pretty happy to watch the ads because I know it's supporting them in aggregate. But the amount of support that I've actually provided for them is so low relatively. And it's to the point where, giving them $1 or a couple bucks would be so much more meaningful in terms of support, which is why, patrons, even if you're $1 or $2 a month for us, right? You're giving us so much more money than you could ever possibly give us through ads, even if you spent almost all your time. If we were the only person, the only creator that you watched on the platform, you still probably wouldn't be giving us $1 a month, right? You would have to actually use bots or automations to the point where it would be fraudulent views.
Sure.
Right?
But I do want to point out, because it feels like this is well-covered ground and we've done it a few times. I want to point out that the part of the discussion that we strongly imply but don't often explicitly say is that when you're talking about that, when, the value of your time, that all goes out the window when it's something you enjoy. Because I don't expect to get paid for reading. I don't expect to get paid for watching a movie or stuff, for sure. Right? So I think this is our overarching underlying rationale. That doesn't work. It still is for playing Injustice, and when cheats are bad and when they're not. Is when you actually take the joy out of something, then it's no longer. Then you introduce. Well, then how do you judge the value of your time and what you do there?
So what I'm hearing is what we need to do is start a YouTube channel that is dedicated to accumulating the type of watcher who really enjoys ads, and then they'll want to. What we should do is we should start a channel that is long compilations, long enough that you can put a bunch of ads in them, of retro advertisements. And then maybe when they get to the normal ad break in it, they'll be so enthralled by the comparison of old and new that they'll watch through the whole thing. And it'll almost be like an extra service that we're providing them. I think that would be really great for our ad metrics. And anyways, I guess the overall point is that, ads aren't a great way of monetizing stuff. No, and I think in general, that's why I have a lot of sort of respect for and sympathy for people when they just have a Patreon or some other subscription base. There's a platform called Dropout, right? Which is what College Humor used to do. And that is an amazing, amazing platform that does it really right. And it's that monthly sort of subscription where it's nicer, I think, if you have the opportunity to uncouple sort of your livelihood or the value you're getting out of it from monopolizing people's times. And you have this sort of consent and enthusiasm based way of getting your money, right? And obviously we have our ads on, so I'm a big old hypocrite, but I think there's certainly better ways to do it. If we were trying to make this our job, my goal would be to get to a point where ads are not necessary.
Right. I mean, another great argument for universal basic income.
That's true.
Yeah.
I saw a really ridiculous clip recently of Sam Altman. He's the CEO of OpenAI. Talking about how in the future, he doesn't know, things might look like universal basic compute instead of universal basic income, where you'd get, for example, a slice of GPT-7's compute time and productivity, which was just such a weird, nonsensical idea to me. Because he was like, oh, you could sell it or donate it or whatever, but it would just be like universal. And it made less than no sense to me as an idea, because he was essentially saying, oh, you could get something that has value. It's like if the government was handing out like Applebee's gift cards instead of like money, right? Where it's not that there's no value for anything, but it's like, what is that? Why would that replace like a system of distributing resources to each other?
But see, and you say that, and yet so many people give gift cards as presents.
Yeah.
There's something to be said for the Asian tradition of just sticking money in a red packet. The red packet makes it a present instead of something instead of something gauche.
And there's lots of other gift giving traditions that allow you for giving cash as well.
Yeah.
From different cultures. Yeah. Well, I think the whole point is that when you're given a gift card or a gift, some cultures see it as like less respectful or less thoughtful to give money, or just straight up like a faux pas, right?
No, I know.
So the idea of like an Applebee's gift card is, I want to treat you to a meal instead of, here's money, figure it out. It's theoretically supposed to be guided, where they are giving you sort of a mix of choice and no choice, right?
And I can see that advantage in people who have so much money that they have no idea what to do with, because then that marginal amount of thought that you put into it is better than no thought. But I feel like that for most people, where money matters, and sometimes you need money, you need to be... See, I'm playing Settlers of Catan a lot. And so it's made me think like differently about the thing. Because I used to play Settlers of Catan where I only worried about the resource value that you roll. Like the better, the more likely it is you roll it, it didn't matter. Because you could always trade it in for something. But if you look at it, the cost of trading 4 for 1 or 3 for 1 or 2 for 1 reduces at least by half, and sometimes as high as 75% the value of what you're trading in.
Yeah.
And you're losing it. So it's the same with gift cards, right? So you're letting Applebee's shave off a certain amount. You get no sort of choice about where you spend the money. You're forced to spend it at Applebee's. And it's really helping Applebee's more. Do you know what I mean? Like it's really just, I don't know. It's
that's one of the things that's kind of funny about it, is because the best money that an Applebee's can get you to spend is on a gift card.
Yeah.
Because even if you don't, lose it in a drawer, which is their best case scenario, because then they've just gotten the full value of the gift card for absolutely nothing.
Right.
Even if they assume that one day you're going to cash in, every company that's big enough essentially becomes like a little mini bank. Right? Yeah. Where they might have investment portfolios, they might have whatever. And at the very least, they've got, all their money tied up in goods. They've got their sort of war chest that they can have a good sense of the future services. And in a lot of cases, they're leveraging for debt. So I think I might have talked about this briefly before, but Costco is apparently always hundreds of millions of dollars in debt. Whenever they reach a certain amount of debt, like $100 million, whatever, they take on more debt. And they are...
You mean when it drops down to a certain amount?
Yeah.
Like, in my mind, I'm thinking, they go for 100, they go for the next 100, then they go for the next 100.
Yeah, no, so they're not trying to break even. They're not trying to clear all their debt. They are leveraging their debt, and borrowing more money so that they're able to expand and keep doing stuff. And apparently, Costco has some of the tightest logistics of any grocery store chain ever. Like, for what they do, they are just like, they're essentially like a logistics company. Like, that is the product that they have innovated on.
But it's funny you say that about Costco, because it used to be that was Walmart's advantage. So it was sort of, they were famous for not having a lot of storage area. So it was just on time delivery. And by saving money on that and by improving the logistics, which didn't cost them nearly as much as the permanent space it took to store stuff and potential wastage and, sucking up resources to have stuff in stock that hadn't sold yet.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And so one of the things that's also really interesting about it is that apparently most of their money comes in membership time. Like, their margins are so thin that the majority of their money comes in membership time. And that cash, and when that cash comes in, is so important. You know how for Costco memberships, for the higher levels, they'll give you cash back? And a lot of the times, basically, you only buy the higher level if you plan on spending enough that you're going to be making money off of it.
Right.
You're going to make at least the difference between the lower level and the higher level.
Right.
And sometimes you can pay off your whole membership. And they can offer that because, again, it's such a tight, narrow logistics margin that getting that cash at that one moment, all in one sort of lump sum, is really, really important to their operations.
But it probably doesn't hurt either that once you've committed a larger amount, right? Like, it's like any kind you buy a membership to anything and you get cash back, you're more motivated if you have the choice between two options. You pick the one that's going to give you more cash back.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, there's something it's multifaceted, right? They get multiple things out of it, but getting a little bit more money right at that point is apparently really important. And it's one of those things where, they try to get their inventory early, they try to pay for it late, right? Like, the nature of the contracts and agreements are really important. And if they had to pay for every single product on delivery, like if that overnight changed, they would basically have to shut down. Like, because it's not precarious, right? I don't want to give you the sense that it's going to shut down tomorrow, but it is incredibly intricate and important that it runs properly, right?
Right. Isn't that, I don't know why it's occurring to me now. It's like, I remember there's a scam that was called kiting checks, where you'd write checks that I think it was writing checks that you didn't have the money for, but you get the money into the account before the check got cashed, so that you'd have, like, there's some way.
Is that a scam, though?
It is, because you're doing stuff that you're not supposed to be able to do.
I guess so. But the people get their money, so it's more like, it's like you're doing something you're not supposed to, but it's nobody's losing all the cash, right? Like, if you put in a check and then took all your money out, and it was that sort of opposite order, and then the person you gave the check to didn't get anything, that would be sort of, I'd see more human cost to it. But anyways, we will look at that, and then we'll do, while you're looking that up, I'll say housekeeping. This is the last week. I think we'll try our best to make next week where we talk about S rank sort of characters for ourselves.
Okay.
And so if you want to give us your opinions, you, the commenter, right now on who you think is in the S rank, we'll maybe try to make next week the one where we go through them, talk about other people's opinions, see if they change your mind, and then share our own opinions on S rank people. Maybe not an exhaustive list, right? But just some, because it's what the people want.
All right, so we need to do some Injustice content, and you've been watching it this whole time.
That's true. So what you've been watching is a Boss Solomon Grundy team. So Boss Solomon Grundy's passive is called One Foot in the Grave, and when Grundy and what it does is Grundy gains bonus damage to his basic attacks based on how close he is to death. He's got 550 attack and 1,250 health at his basic stats.
So what jumps out at me is how low his attack stat is, which is so counterproductive. I mean, you have this potential. So if you're just looking at it on paper, you can potentially, I think, get up to 10 times the basic damage.
Yeah.
From his basic attacks. And you think, wow, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
However, you're starting off with less than half the attack of what most challenge characters have.
Mm-hmm. So then, practically speaking, it's closer to 5 times. And then it's also only on basic. And then the whole point is, when you're low health, you're close to dead.
So, but on top of that, though, Solomon Grundy in general is slow. Boss Solomon Grundy is painfully slow to the point where his swipe attacks are unusable. They are really slow, so slow that it's a challenge to get any attacks unblocked. Chances are the opponent is going to be able to either block or counterpunch you while you are trying to do a swipe attack.
Yeah.
And so effectively you're cutting in half the potential damage you can do one more time, because swipe attacks are worth twice the damage of... Is it twice the damage? Maybe not twice.
But
I have to look. I think it's actually twice. I can't remember. So you're cutting it... So that 10 times becomes, at best, 2.5 times of somebody who's slower. And what it's cost you is the attack stat. Because characters don't just do basic damage. They do specials. And now you're working with a guy who's doing half the damage on the specials that he should for what he is. I mean, 550 is painfully low. That would be like a good augmented silver. You could do 550. Maybe my math is totally off, but I feel like I'm feeling very salty about Boss Solomon Grundy. Now, that being said...
Because he kind of sucks.
Well, so here's the thing, right? Like, he's not even the worst character. So he has a reputation, I think a well-deserved one, for being one of the worst characters. But there are actually characters like Suicide Squad, Joker Unhinged, with a passive that is actively bad. Boss Solomon Grundy's passive...
He's just kind of weak and not that fun to play.
It's not enough to make up for what they did to his stats.
Yeah.
So, and the interesting thing is that I didn't realize this. I was taking a look at the wiki, and I'm just going to read a paragraph from it. Solomon Grundy Boss is a unique card. So that's funny that they do it the other way around. I know there's not really a great convention for...
It's not standardized,
Yeah. Solomon Grundy Boss is a unique card that deals exponentially more damage as his health depletes. At certain health thresholds, he gains a damage multiplier to his basic attacks, up to 10 times damage at very low health. Note that there are 2 criteria to utilize his passive. The first is at a certain health percentage, and the second is based on the amount of hits dealt. For example, a 2-hit special 2 from Bane Prime can reduce Grundy's health to a very low percentage, yet he only gains 2 times damage, not 10 times, despite reaching that threshold. A few more low damage hits can help to catch up to the correct multiplier you're supposed to have. So I didn't realize this, is that at best, each hit that is given...
Can ratchet him up 1 level.
Right, but if each hit does too much damage, he can get down to the really low level without actually maxing out his passive.
Which sucks. That's even worse.
Yeah. So that, and maybe, so this is what they're saying about a few more low damage hits. So you're hoping then, I guess, that the next sort of little hits are small enough that it doesn't knock him out, but does enough, but he gets the credit for getting hit to lower his health, a little bit, and raise his damage a little bit more.
And what a terrible situation to be in, to have your health already really low, right? The whole point is that you're near death, and then to need the enemy to hit you to activate your power without knocking you out. Right? You have to let hits in and to still not die. That's like a terrible, terrible situation to be in.
Yeah. So, and that's why he's got such a reputation. So in the old days, but he was nerfed at one point when he was first introduced, before they did anything to him. You could reduce his health and heal him, and then he would still maintain his activated passive.
Yeah.
So you could heal him back. Back in the day when healing stacked.
Yeah.
You could bring him back to full health and still maintain his 10 times damage bonus. Almost worth it. Again, in the old days, before Tantu Totem, before it was so easy to gain power just from tagging in.
Yeah.
Basics mattered. And so the best teams were driven by basics, and specials were a bonus. And that's not the world we live in anymore.
Yeah.
So I guess Boss Solomon Grundy has gotten really screwed a bunch of different ways. First, when he was created for having lower health to make up for his passive.
Or lower damage.
Sorry, lower damage, right. Because health is decently high.
Yeah.
Lower damage. Then he was screwed when they nerfed him by canceling out his passive if you gained health back. Although, if you completely heal with something like, if you revive with Necron Scythe,
Yeah.
you still maintain whatever level you boosted his passive to, his attack stat. And then they screwed him one more time by introducing Tantu Totem Master's Death card and made it so easy to gain power that having a basic damage dealer, a main, a guy on your team mainly to do basic damage became not so useful.
Yeah.
So he's been diminished over and over again since he was introduced.
It's not like he was ever massively fun to play with anyways. He started out kind of okay, and he got worse over and over again.
It was interesting, right? Like, it was one of those things where, like, when, I think it was General Zod, where when his teammates get knocked out, he gets more health and more damage.
Yeah.
And it used to be that you could really extend that a bunch of times with, say, Aquaman's Atlantean hero.
Yeah.
And let him get knocked out. And so this was sort of like that, where let's see what you can do to try to max out his basic damage and heal him a bunch to make him still useful for fighting.
It doesn't make him great, but it lets you use him in a fun and interesting way.
Yeah.
And then unfortunately, they restrict sort of the possibility space. So instead of being a mediocre character who you could do something that felt like you're getting away with something, you can't feel like you're getting away with something, and he sucks. He sucks really bad.
Right.
Yeah. So there we go.
So he's not the worst, but he's clearly not among the good ones.
You're scraping the bottom of the barrel with him. He's in the category of people who I think is not fun to play, and who you would never, or not you, because I'm assuming something about the listener, but who we would never choose to play when we have so many better options. Like, there's just by the time you would be forced to play him, everybody else's energy would be back, right? Like, even if you're playing nonstop.
So I want to point out a few things that you're going to see you're seeing in the video already, is that we're actually trying to make him a specialist. And so that's where you see the limitations, because his attack stat is so low. That means his special 2 doesn't do enough damage, and it rarely knocks out any kind of high-level opponent on the first try.
Yeah.
And you can probably make up for that a little bit. We've promoted him to level 8. You could augment his attack stats a bit to try to make him a little better. But it's a lot of work, and you got to really love him to make it worth spending relatively scarce and valuable augmentations on him.
Yeah.
Special 1 is mostly ranged. It looks like it shouldn't be, but it's because it's him swinging his cleaver. But it's pretty decent, and if you're fast enough, even with Master's Death card shoving the opponent back, you can get in your Special 1 and hit him, so that on your retag in, you can, because of our loadout with Claw of Horus and Master's Death card combined, you can shatter all the opponent's gear on tagging. However, you gotta be careful. Even though Master's Death card doesn't shove far enough, Enchantress Skulls does. And so what you're seeing a couple of times is, in order to buy the time, we've tagged in Rebirth Raven. She does a special. Well, she steals a power, and then she does a special. And then her skulls are coming in as Boss Sullen Grundy tags in. And it's almost impossibly fast enough to do his special 1 before the skulls have shoved the opponent so far away that your special 1 doesn't connect. And the reason why that matters is because if it does connect when you're shattering all the gear, then you've got enough time to tag in Rebirth Raven again to steal the opponent's power. But if you don't connect and they get shoved backwards, then they have an opportunity to attack you before Rebirth Raven can tag in to take away their power.
Yeah.
Which kind of sucks.
So there we go.
Yeah.
We're going to answer, hopefully, at least one question. The first couple hopefully won't take too long, but our first question of the week comes from Rhymes Like Dimes 2545, and they say, do they update this game? And that's an interesting question.
It's an interesting question because it depends on what you mean by update.
No, they don't. There hasn't been an update, like a content update to this game for a very long time. But also kind of yes. And for a long time, the answer would have been no, and it looks like they never are. But for the first time, they've actually done a thing, right? They've made a change in the game. It's not, an update in the, there's an update on the App Store, update on the Google Play Store update.
But it feels like an existential question. Like, what is an update?
Yeah.
So if you look at it, it shows updates, like bug fixes.
Yeah.
Those have been updates.
That's true.
And like you said, they're reintroducing challenge characters.
Yeah.
They are clearly making changes, but what most people mean by updates, even though they're not saying it,
new
is
content.
Yeah.
And basically what they're doing is that they're correcting a mistake that they've made at an earlier time that made it so that old content that they'd actually completed and put in the game was not becoming available for people again. Right. So if you're a player within the past couple of years, there is, functionally speaking, new content that is slowly being rolled out. Because for years you weren't able to get to it. But it's more of like they're opening the vaults, you know? And allowing people to get stuff that they should have been able to get this whole time.
All right, so another thing that's interesting to me then is because for the type of game that Injustice is, that takes so long to actually max out your characters and to collect all the characters and to do everything, they set themselves up for failure in a way by introducing too much content.
Yeah.
Like there was too much new content. There's too many new characters, which each update every, 6 months, they would introduce a bunch of new characters. They could have
dripped it out a lot slower to people?
Well, it would have changed people's expectations. People expected new games. They introduced new play modes. At the beginning, there was only story mode.
Yeah.
And then they introduced the higher levels. Then they introduced augmentations. Then they introduced multiplayer. Then they introduced breakthrough. Then they introduced... the order's not
Lots
right.
of stuff.
Just not only new characters, but new play modes.
Yeah.
Like, that's wild to me, that on a mobile game...
That we got so much content over such a long time.
Such a short period of time. When you think about it, the amount of time that it's been since new content was released, has it been half the time? Like, how long... When did they stop releasing new content?
That's a good question.
Because it's at least 4 years. When they stopped changing the challenge cycle, that was it for new characters, right? Mm-hmm. When they went into and there was a lost... So that's 2020. So sometime before that, the game's about 10 years old. So at most, there's 6 years worth where they were... Like, it was amazing.
Yeah, that's true.
And so this is the kind of game where if they just did one new character every year, because it takes so long to accumulate all the things that you need to be able to really take advantage of how the game works, they could have easily extended the life of this game to the point where people were still expecting and getting new content.
Yeah.
For years.
I think one of the big problems with Injustice, honestly, in its current form, is the way that it is online. Because technically it's online, but you never play live with any other player ever. And I think that makes things significantly more stale faster, right? There's, I forget who told the joke, but there's that joke about juggling, where juggling is one of the only skills where, like, every, 15 seconds, you need to do something bigger and better because people will get bored of it so fast, right? The idea is you see somebody juggling, you go, oh, that's really cool. And, then another 30 seconds of them juggling 3 balls and you go, yeah, I'm kind of over it now. Can you do a 4th ball? Can you do a different pattern? Can you do more stuff? Yeah, can you start juggling something dangerous? Can you put a glass in there? And then if you go, no, I just the 3 balls, they go, okay, cool, I'm over it, right? Really fast. Yeah. And so I think, a lot of online games gain their value from the natural variety that comes from human behavior, right? Yeah. And so, I think about, fighting games that often have very few updates, very slow, where people put hundreds or thousands of hours into it. You think about sort of shooters like Overwatch, TF2, Valorant, that kind of thing, right? Where in a game like Valorant, they are releasing new characters, but very slowly. It's like it's like 2 a year, I think, or 1 a year. I forget which one it is. And the sort of 2 things that happen is, I think in a lot of these games, there's either a huge amount of obvious mechanical depth to the point where new characters play very differently for one reason or another. And then the other benefit is that there's online play where you're playing live against people. And I think that there is definitely, when you get into the nitty gritty of it for Injustice, a lot of variations between how characters play. But I think it's less in the big strokes, right? Nobody plays totally differently, and it's more in the nuances. And so I think because of that, you need more variety more often to keep things fresh for people. And because you're always you are essentially playing against one opponent in every single place in Injustice. It's the AI, right? And it doesn't significantly change between fights. So you need a lot of different types of fights, different types of encounters, different sort of questions and problems that the game needs to pose to you that aren't happening in the form of your opponent. They have to happen in the form of things that are mechanically coded into the game, right? Different types of fights, the boss fight, Survivor, right? The way that the nuances of how those make you play differently are more important for keeping it fresh for you. And I think for those sort of 2 reasons, you run into a problem where, just practically speaking, you probably do feel a pressure, and to some extent it is real, to release more content more often.
But see, I'm gonna give you the counter argument though. How long did we play when it was only level 40 in Elite 5?
We played for a long time.
How long would it have taken us to, when they just increased the levels and the promotions, to just have played it? I think it has something to do with what you're saying, but I think a lot of it has to do with managing expectations. Because if they hadn't given that to us at the beginning, I think it still would have been enjoyable for a lot of people to keep on playing like that.
I think it's a little bit of both. I think their goal was to sort of retain as many people as possible, because really that's the things that you want. You want a game that retains some people a lot, right? And ideally you want to either make people play longer or spend more money or retain a larger subset of the people who download your game in the first place. And so I think part of their sort of release rate was meant to retain a higher percentage of the people who came through.
Well, and as much as I'm complaining about that, right, there's no way they could have done it because they didn't expect the life cycle of the game to be that long.
That's true.
It was really only a promotional tool for the console game.
Yeah, the fact that we got as much time and stuff out of it is pretty surprising.
And that the game got as good as it did.
Yeah.
And when you're looking at the kind of connections that people can have on their, or that typically have on their phone, and the lag involved, I think it wouldn't have been as fun as it would have been to play other people.
Yeah.
I don't think it's practical. When you look at the way we play it and how much
I think
frame locking matters.
That there's trade-offs for everything, and I think they made mostly the right decisions for what it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think those are definitely factors.
So when I say they could have done this, I'm in no way criticizing what they did, because I think you're right. They made the best decision that they could have at the time.
Yeah.
But it's such a shame because people's expectations are so high that what they're doing, which is still good, which is supporting a server, letting us play this collecting game to collect stuff,
feels like the game is dying. Yeah,
right.
It's true.
Right.
Yeah. So I think we can maybe practice a little gratitude and be thankful for what we got. And the fact that, at the end of it, it's still a very playable, very good game. It's still here, you know? It's like, there's a tweet from Tyler, the creator, where he goes, I hate it when people say, oh, I miss the old Tyler. My albums are all still up. You can listen to them. I'm doing what I want to do now. You can do whatever you want to do now.
Yeah.
Just listen to my old music. He's still there. All this stuff is still out there.
This is the same criticism that people have of shows that, like, when something, a comic book or a book or a story or whatever that they like gets translated in a different medium, and the translation is not very good, and they say it's ruined it for them.
Yeah.
Well, it hasn't. The original is still there. It's what it's done is brought more people's attention. It's a good example of this is, what's his name? Jim Butcher. He did the Dresden Files, and that the books are a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It starts off not nearly as good as it gets. So as fun as it is to start, it gets much better. But it didn't become the phenomenon that it is until there was a really lousy show put out for it. So when you're talking about one sort of level that's orders of magnitude bigger, and you can drive that audience to something that typically doesn't reach a lot of people.
Yeah.
Right? Not a lot of people read. Most people don't read for fun much.
Yeah.
And like Game of Thrones, same thing.
Yeah.
Like orders of magnitude bigger to drive the audience. What was the point? I think it was dovetailing something you said, and I can't even remember what the point was now.
I don't know. The old stuff is still there.
Old stuff is still there.
New stuff doesn't ruin it.
New stuff just brings new eyeballs.
Yeah.
It's just good.
So there we go. That's
You know what? Let's do one quickie, because I think we can do.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay, because I got.
All right, so then I'll do this one really fast, because I have an interesting sort of point that I think I'm going to forget if we wait until next week.
Okay. Sorry, I was already scrolled down to the patrons. Let me
say it's at Honey.
Yep. Honey Razel Alfred Belor 3982. They say, hey man, it's my first time commenting here.
Oh, Alfred. It's Alfred Belor. Honey Razel Alfred Belor.
Yeah. Whatever. They say, hey man, it's my first time commenting here. I really want to say thank you for not giving up on playing Injustice. I love you guys. Anyways, what is your best advice for mediocre players? I don't know if I'm willing to say I love you yet, but thank you for commenting. I appreciate you.
So I do want to say, I'm not going to answer this the way most people want to answer it, which is to say, this is strategy. You need to do this, do this, do this, do this. Because the answer isn't, what's your best advice for advancing? What's your best advice? No, to me, if I'm going to interpret it my way, my best advice is, what's going to give you the most joy out of this game? And so my advice is to play as many of the different characters that you've got, and spend a decent amount of time with each one so that you can figure out what you like about them, what works, what doesn't work, but so that you get a real appreciation for the variety and the differences and the nuances of the game. Because if you don't, then the game is not going to be as much fun.
Yeah. So seek fun. Try to find joy.
Yeah.
Here we go. That's great. To finish up, we'd like to give a huge thank you to all of our lovely patrons on Patreon. We'd like to give a thank you to Michael Devries, Irvin Ruiz, Hoshi127, Nora Klimek, and Paolo-Cesar-Pablo-Juan, who are supporting us on the credited level.
That's a new patron.
And they have made their profile picture a screenshot of my face from the YouTube video that is not patron only, but is linked on Patreon only. You, as a non-patron user, you'd have a hard time finding it.
Welcome, Paolo-Cesar-Pablo-Juan.
Yeah, on the credit level, as well as 5x5 supporting us on the gratitude level. So thank you so much for your direct financial support, and thanks you so much to all of you for watching, listening, hanging out with us for more than half an hour of your time and hearing us yap at you. We appreciate it. So yeah, thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Komoda.